sure I have this to put up later. So I want to address and attack, I guess, our stumbles and struggles from a scriptural basis, from a kingdom life basis, and from an understanding of unity. So I don't think anybody would doubt or argue for 1 second that I can call in spiritual backup, as it were. I can call in, I can pray, I can ask the Lord to strengthen me, I can ask Him to send help at any time in whatever, struggle or whatever issue I've got going on. I can just say, Lord, help me, and He'll send an angel. We know that. We know God will dispatch angels. Come on. I think that's probably a pretty good, I don't think we have to have a huge argument on that, right? I mean, Psalm 91, 11 and 12. For He will command His angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. They will lift you up in their hands so that you will not strike your foot against the stone. Speaking most about Jesus there, but also, the rest of us. Luke 1, 26 and 28. In the 6th month of Elizabeth's pregnancy, God sent an angel, Gabriel, to Nazareth, a town in Galilee, to a virgin pledged to be married to a man named Joseph. The virgin's name was Mary. The angel went to her. Greetings, you who are highly favored, said the angel. The Lord is with you. This passage highlights the angel delivering the message to Mary about Jesus. And then again in Acts 12:7. Suddenly an angel of the Lord appeared, and a light shone in the cell. He struck Peter on the side and woke him up. Get up quickly, he said, and the chains fell off Peter's wrist. Here's an angel literally coming to free Peter from his prison. Now here's the big, I guess, kicker we have to understand here is, will God send angels to protect us now? Well, we've heard stories. I heard a story one time. A little girl was in the house where her mother was killed by, I believe her mother was killed by her father, or her parents were killed by robbers. And when they found her, the police officer or something was asking her, like, okay, are you all right? I know that was scary, and et cetera, et cetera. And she was like, well, it wasn't that bad. That guy helped me. And they said, which guy? What guy? What are you talking about? And she described him, and it was literally the description of most of the pictures that we see of Jesus. Now, there are people who will say that is a figment of her imagination, that her own mind made that up to comfort her. And, I guess you could say that, but I don't really think I'm there. I don't think I believe it. I understand that you could talk about this, you could debate it all day long, and I know there are some people who are like, there are people who are good, wonderful Christian people who would not believe for 1 second that an angel came to protect you. I disagree. He speaks about it plenty of times. Speaks about angels coming all through the Bible, about angels coming to earth. God doing miracles, Jesus doing miracles, Moses striking the rock and making water come out, and the manna from heaven, and all of these things that we see in Scripture, and they're like, well, but God doesn't do that anymore. If that's the case, that actually lends credence to a question I asked the other day. Is it that God doesn't do that anymore, or are we holding back His blessing by not trusting His plan? Jeremiah 29:11, from the very first of our 15-day studies. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. He has the plans for us. He will provision us for the work that He has given us to do to make these plans happen. So if that's the case, then wouldn't one of those things be spiritual intervention, spiritual, miracles? Isn't it possible that's one of the places where He'll be like, all right, I got you. I got you. I know. You're like, what? What did he just say? No, seriously. I've seen it in my own life. I've seen it in my own life. Just things that happened that didn't make sense, or maybe did make sense in the time, but I didn't understand completely why until a later date when I was looking back going, wow, that could have been horrible, or wow, how great that turned out. There was one time I was working away most weeks, and it was the middle of January, and it was like 5 or 6 below zero, and the wind chill made it 27 below zero. It was one of those El Nino, El Bibo, whatever, one of them storms where it got really cold for a couple of weeks. It was literally the coldest day of the year up until that day. This January, it was like January 27th. It was like a Sunday. I'm traveling from where I live at the time in Phillipsburg, Pennsylvania, to Indiana, PA. And at the time, I was doing this work where I would go in and we would reset these paint displays in stores. And I was on my way to Indiana, and I'm going down a Route 28, I think it was, that you get off the interstate, and you go down this Route 28, you can cut about a half hour off your trip. And I was like, I'm just going to cut down through there. And it got bad out, and then the car broke down. Well, let me jump back to before that. The day before, the Saturday before I left on Sunday, I was at Walmart with a friend, and they had coats on sale. Now, anybody who knows me, it's got to be 4 degrees out for me to even consider bothering with a coat. They're too much trouble. I don't really care. I only started putting. I wear shorts most days. My legs and my legs where the scarring is left from my summer of leprosy, they itch and they hurt, and it's still kind of very, very aggravating. And it seems to not be quite as bad if I'm wearing shorts. So most of the time I wear shorts. I very rarely put on pants, whether it be sweatpants, real pants, whatever. I very rarely. And my wife will tell you that she knew it was cold outside. The morning she got up and I was getting ready to go to work and I was putting on a pair of sweats. She literally looked at me and said, "Oh, it's cold out, isn't it?" I'm like, "Yeah, a little bit." She knew. She was like, "Okay, if he's putting on pants, it's got to be cold outside." And it was. So you need to know that to understand this. That Saturday when I was with my friend, these coats were on sale, like 15, 18 bucks, whatever. It was like real deep discount, especially for like the middle of January. It makes sense. Couldn't tell you, how that would ever make sense. And I was in marketing for a long time. Didn't make sense to drop the prices on stuff like that. You don't drop the prices of stuff like that when the coldest time of the year. You drop it when it's, middle of June, it's 90 degrees out. So my friend's like, "We're going to get you a coat. We're going to get you a coat." I'm like, "I don't want a freaking coat. I don't wear them. It's senseless." And we were picking up a handful of groceries. I was on my way home Saturday afternoon, hang out with the kids and make some dinner or whatever. And I think she was coming with. Finally, she's just like, "You know what? Here, let me get it for you. Let me get it for you. It'll be my gift. If you never use it, no big deal." So I said, "Yeah, whatever." Just to kind of shut her up. I'm like, "Okay, whatever." And we finish getting groceries. We go out to get into the car. We load the groceries into the car, and I think it was snowing out. It was a little cold. Whatever. It's wintertime. We load all the groceries into the car, and I had tossed the coat in the car with the groceries, just trunk of the car. Went home, took the groceries in, never gave that coat a second thought. Never gave that coat a second thought. And I leave Sunday. It's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe 3. It's about a 3-hour drive to where I'm going. I get down to this place. It's about, I don't know, probably better than halfway to where I was going. But it was about another half hour, 45-minute trip to the store where I was going to reset paint to meet the crew. There was a crew of people that I met with that we worked together with, all that. But I didn't always have their contact information in the beginning, so the car breaks down. And I'm like, it's like I said, with the wind chill, it's like minus 27. I'm in a place where, in order to get cell service, I'm going to have to walk a ways forward or a ways back. I chose to walk a ways forward, thinking that I could get close enough to the store, I might be able to get, well, that I could be moving closer to the store, that I might get a hold of somebody. Once I had cell phone service, I might be able to get a hold of somebody who could come up from the store and get me. The best possible scenario here, other than, car starting back up. So I walked up. I'll bet you I walked half a mile, maybe 3/4 of a mile, before I finally had just enough service to make a phone call. And I tried a couple of the numbers that I did have for people that I knew were going to be on site that night. Nothing. All right. Now, we don't start until 9. It's like 6. So, some of these people, because we worked 9 o'clock at night until 3 o'clock in the morning, so some of these people might have been sleeping still or whatever. So, all right, what am I going to do? It's super cold out. Before I walked, I'm standing there thinking I'm going to freeze to death on this walk, and I decided to look around and see if I could find something. I had forgotten, mind you, about the coat. If I could find something to wrap myself with. Maybe there's a blanket in the back or something, So I popped the trunk open, and there's this coat. And I'm just like, it was like the Lord knew, which he did. It was like the Lord was like, listen, he's going to freeze to death. We got to do something. So he nudged my friend to get me a coat. And don't ask me to explain how it happened, but I never wore coats. I never even owned a coat until this coat that, I used to get like a sweat jacket, like sweater, like a sweatshirt. That was good enough. If it got cold out, I just throw on a sweatshirt. I'd be good. Because I didn't, do a whole lot of walking in the wintertime. So why would I need a coat? So that was one of those times where God just blessed me with this thing that I didn't even realize I needed. There was no understanding of why I would need it. There was no, it just didn't make any sense. But there I was, this coat. Now, I'll bet you I could give you another 100 examples of things like that where the Lord protected me from something I didn't even know I needed protecting from, or where the Lord protected me from myself, from my own machinations of thinking that I knew what was best. For some reason, my actual mic's not working. I'm going to ask you to. Well, we're going to use the webcam mic. I'm not sure, but my mic isn't working. I'm not entirely sure why. So, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Usually I can hear it through that. Turn that off and try turning it back on. See if that helps. So bear with me for just a second here, but I was talking about the idea that we set sponsors up for all of the what do you call it? For all the 1, 2, 1, 2. See, it's not even working there. It's like I turned off the mic somehow. Well, I don't know what's going on. I think that mic died. Aw, man. Seriously? One, two. One, two. I think this. Well, my mic died. So I guess I'm going to finish out. I hope it doesn't sound too terrible. Because it looks like we're going to have to finish out with the mic, the webcam mic, which is not ideal, but hopefully it'll work out. Of course, that means I can move that mic. Okay, so we'll get back into, let me turn this down a little bit. Let me turn this off. See here. Mic. And sorry, just bear with me, folks. Try that. Okay, so what I want to talk about now is I guess I'm going to wrap this up because now we've got a mic busted. That's terrible. I've had that mic for a couple of years, so it was pretty cheap, so not a huge surprise that. And now it's working. Wait a second here. 1, 2, 1. Man, I'm telling you, I don't know what's going on here. I want to blame everything on the enemy all the time. But I moved the mic and it started working. I don't know, maybe it cut off because it was loud. See, I've had some issues with mics lately, and it was pretty pronounced this afternoon, so maybe that was... All right, so anyway, I want to talk about this concept of a sponsor. I know for some of you, especially if you've never had any experience or dealings with the Alcoholics Anonymous or whatever, you may be wondering, like, what in the world is this guy talking about? Well, you go to an AA meeting, you get a sponsor. You get a team. You get people who you can turn to. And I have those. I picked a couple of people who I very much love and respect. And they have, it has evolved over the years. It changes. It goes back and forth. It really does go back and forth. Sometimes I'll call Claire. Other times I will call someone else. I'll call Pastor Ryan. Sometimes my wife is my sponsor, and sponsor would be a different word than mentor, in my opinion. And I'll tell you why. You get some things from somebody if you consider somebody a mentor, you treat them like a mentor. A lot of times when we talk about mentors, we think about people who can guide us, will help us, will work with us to grow spiritually or in any other thing, whatever it is, computers, cooking, but they're asked. And a really good mentor is probably going to become basically a Kingdom Life sponsor anyway, because a really good mentor in Kingdom Life is going to check in. And that's the thing that I want to get really right down to the brass tacks about, because there are people who I thought I could count on, who I thought knew what I meant. When I look at Brother Wade and I call him Brother Wade, he knows that I mean it. And too often, at least this has been my experience as of late, too often when we disagree with certain people who claim to be family, the problem is that they're not. And they will just drop you like a hot rock. And it can be very discouraging. It can be very discouraging. It can be quite trying to think of the best word for it, disillusioning. So when you have somebody who literally for years, decades, you thought was a follower of Christ, who you thought would always recognize the truth of the gospel, who would always, whether it's holding you accountable or other people, be willing to exercise what we call scriptural discipline, church discipline. That's a thing that was discussed, that was written about by the early Christians, that was something that had to be figured out. And that person, when it's put to the test, they suddenly falter, they stumble. What happens? Well, that's a big deal, because I only put my faith in Christ. Years ago, I had what some people called a crisis of faith, because and they called it that because they could only see it from the outward looking in, from looking at me. I was working as the secretary of the church, and a whole bunch of things happened, and somebody didn't like the fact that I saw him and his girlfriend, and he was afraid I was going to tell his wife, so he basically ran me out of the church. And this was almost 20 years ago. And I stopped going because why would I? There was a whole bunch of other things to it, too. There's a lot to it. But a lot of people thought, my mother was one of them, that it was a crisis of faith. And at one point I looked at Mom, and I was going to a different gathering at the time. And I had been working to talk through and work through forgiveness for these people who had done what they had done to me, with the pastor who I was working with at that time. And my mother looked at me and she's like, I know you're having a crisis of faith, but I wish you'd come to church. And I said, Mom, my crisis isn't of faith. My faith in God didn't waver. My crisis is a crisis of people. Because the people that I thought were family. We are raised, if you're raised in the church, you are raised, this is family. We're all family in the Church of Christ. If you're raised that way, and then you have people who you thought were family who disappoint you, attack you, it can be real easy to superimpose on those people the identity of Christian. And I'm not saying they're not Christians. One thing we should all understand and get to know and make sure it's it's at the forefront of our mind anytime someone lets us down or acts badly towards us or whatever. The one big thing you got to really recognize is that even followers of Christ are human, and we're going to mess up. Just a fact of life. And we'll go more into that when we come back. For those of you watching the recording, because we're going to end part one right now.